All right. Okay, it's telling me I'm live. Maybe I'm live. Hopefully. Hi. I feel like a grandma right now because I don't know how to use any of this technology. So, welcome to my live webinar. Nobody's here right now, which is great for me. Before I get started with my little presentation here, I wanted to say that my brain's working slightly slower than usual. I got my COVID vaccination, or my first COVID vaccination yesterday. I'm definitely feeling the symptoms. All the symptoms that they talk about is how I'm feeling today. So, but I wanted to first kind of share why I'm doing this webinar and what my plans are. So the purpose of this webinar is to be kind of an extension of the subreddit, the r/puberphonia. So I'm hoping that this can kind of be a place where you guys can ask questions. For those of you who don't know, I'm a speech therapist. I've worked a little bit with puberphonia and have just noticed that there's not a whole lot of resources out there for my guys here. So my plans for the webinar is for there to be sort of a support group. So I'm hoping that, so my stream is public right now, but once I'm done with the stream, and I don't know how long YouTube's going to let me be live, so that'll be an interesting sort of thing to find out here. But it's public now, but I'm hoping that it can be unlisted. So I'll have it unlisted, published for others to come get, and I'll have that link up on the subreddit so that it can be a little bit more private. I know kind of the nature of the disorder makes it a little challenging to kind of be out and in public and talking about the struggles of the disorder. And then I'm also hoping to do some of these in the future, depending on if this is helpful, if I'm getting more questions. I do get a lot of direct messages with a lot of the same questions, so I want to hit those today as well. So if we have anybody that joins and has questions or comments, I'm more than happy to answer those. And yeah, let's get started. So puberphonia, also known as mutational falsetto, is caused by, so when men, particularly men, women can get puberphonia too, but the difference between a childhood voice and an adult voice in women is usually the change isn't so drastic and there's not so many societal pressures on having a certain kind of voice, right? So actually having a higher voice usually works out better for women. But so puberphonia happens when a man goes through puberty. During puberty, men typically, they're like inside of your larynx lowers and your vocal folds thicken. And because of those physical changes, you get a deeper voice. So someone with puberphonia has gone through those physical changes, but their voice hasn't changed. So essentially what's happening is all of your muscles are bringing your larynx up so that you have a much higher pitched voice. So your body is actually working against what it's supposed to be doing. So it's labeled as a psychogenic voice disorder, just meaning that there's nothing going on in like your brain pathways or how your brain is functioning or with how you are physically functioning, but there's some kind of mind component here. That's what psychogenic means, right? Coming from the mind. So a couple disclaimers. So one disclaimer is that I won't be able to tell you why you have puberphonia, right? There's lots of different theories out there, but none that has enough backing that I'm aware of, none that has enough backing for me to be like, oh, this is why you as an individual have puberphonia. That would probably be better served if y'all get some counseling, or get some sort of psychotherapy to kind of maybe look back and see what the cause of that might have been. But more importantly, I think, is that there are such pressures on men to have a deep voice, and having a voice that is different than what you would expect for somebody can really just mess with your self-esteem, can really mess with your mind. So you might find that going to therapy or counseling will help with that area of your life, right? I find that a lot of people, we can find their voice, find a new voice for them fairly quickly, but still that fear of speaking or that fear of being social, sometimes the agoraphobia still stays. And it's not as easy as having a new voice. Another disclaimer is these webinars and this support group that I'm trying to create here is no substitute for therapy or speech therapy, right? A speech therapist is going to be able to see you and react to you in real time. I do know that there's a lot of privilege that comes with being able to go to a speech therapist. Not a lot of insurance companies cover speech therapy. They think of it as more of a cosmetic issue. Excuse me. The webinars are meant to give you guys some resources, but they're not meant to replace speech therapy. It's not as if, hey, you don't need speech therapy anymore. It's kind of go through the webinars, take some advice. If it's just not working, or if you're not sure, try and find a speech therapist in your area. And so you can go to the ASHA website if you're in America. It's the American Speech and Language Hearing Association, ASHA. I know there's language in there, but the L is silent. So it's ASHA. You go to their website and there is like a speech therapist finder. So you would want to look for somebody who advertises that they specialize in voice disorders. You might be able to find these people at an ENT office. Sometimes they'll have speech therapists that specialize in voice disorders. They can also do endoscopy. Yeah, endoscopy, where they put the camera. I'm losing all of my words today. Sorry. Where they can actually put the camera and look and make sure that your larynx is functioning appropriately, right? That don't have any cysts or polyps or nodules or anything like that, right? Because sometimes when you overuse your voice, like when you have puberphonia, that kind of comes with the territory, you're overusing the muscles and all of that. Sometimes you can get vocal nodules, and there may be more than just the puberphonia happening. Okay, I think I get through all of my disclaimers. Maybe not. So now I want to get into some relaxation techniques. So we're not going to talk about getting a new voice quite yet. We're going to talk about relaxation techniques first, because I've talked about the muscles holding up your larynx kind of being part of puberphonia, right? It comes with the territory. So now you've had a lot of tension over time. Now you've just been kind of overusing all of those muscles. So these relaxation techniques kind of help mitigate that before we start going into therapy. And so I have 3 that I use without voice and 3 that I use with voice. Something that I don't necessarily appreciate about voice therapy is that it can get a little wooey, right? It can get a little like just slightly embarrassing. It kind of reminds me of like acting techniques where, actors are they look kind of silly. They're just trying to warm up and getting into a headspace where they can act. It kind of reminds me of that. And it can be kind of embarrassing for me. So I know when a client looks at me like, really, Paige, what are you trying to get me to do? I know. So I like to start with the ones without voice. They're a little bit just easier. So my first one without voice is to just do a yawn. So if you guys would like to do it with me, I'll be doing them as an example. So give a good yawn. And you can do those a couple of times. I know it's hard to yawn more than once. Let's see. And then the second one is sip breathing. So you're going to inhale a couple of times as if you were inhaling through a straw and then breathing out slowly, like. And now I want you to cough. I can't fake it without making a real one happen. And now the ones with voice. So I want you to yawn again, but I want you to yawn as if you just had the longest, roughest day of your life. Those really annoying people that yawn so loud. I want you to be one of those. I want you to yawn. Just like that annoying yawn that people do. Let's see. Now I want you to do a glide. So I want you to go from the highest pitch that you can manage to the lowest pitch that you can manage. Do it again. Perfect. And then last one, this would be something that if we were meeting in person, I might actually help you do, but it is something that you can do with practice. It does take a lot of concentration. It's a strategy called digital manipulation. Sorry about that. It's called digital manipulation because you are using your digits and you're manipulating your larynx. So what I want you to do is find your larynx. You can find that with your Adam's apple. Women also have Adam's apples, just so you know. They're just less prominent. So my larynx is going to be quite high, but I want you to gently kind of move your larynx around like, mine's a little tight right now. There we go. It shouldn't move a whole lot, and you should be able to just kind of gently move it around. And now we're going to do the voice part here. So what I want you to do is I want you to find a note that you're comfortable with and just sustain it. Then I'm going to have you push gently with your fingers on your Adam's apple. What's going to happen is that's going to force your voice to go lower. It's kind of like with guitar strings. When you loosen guitar strings, they make a lower sound. They produce a lower note there. That one sounded more professional. So you're going to push. It's going to lower your voice. So I'm going to show you that so far. It's going to force it, right? You don't even have to think about it. Then when you take your fingers away, I want you to sustain that low note. So that's going to be the part that takes a little bit of brain power. So it'll look something like this. My voice broke a little bit there. It does still take concentration for me, even though I've done it 100 times. Do it again. And keep going down a little bit lower. So what was the note? So keep doing it. Do it a few times. All right, so now this is the time. This is the exciting time where we find our voice. So what we do, since it is a psychogenic pathology, is we kind of trick the brain, right? There are a few things that you do where your brain's not considering your voice. So it's a few natural functions like sneezing, coughing, clearing your throat. That's typically where you're going to find the voice that your larynx is built for. Now, I will say, I forgot to mention this in the disclaimers. See, I did not get all of the disclaimers. So this these techniques are pretty much only going to work if you have puberphonia. Now, there are people that consider their voice much higher than it should be, right? And that's true. Sometimes you get somebody whose voice is outside that average range for men. And I don't want to invalidate anybody's experience. We have a lot of societal pressures that would cause somebody to really hate their voice, right? If you hate your voice, if you think that it is too high, that's valid, and you can still go to a speech therapist, and you can still find ways to be much happier with your voice. But this webinar is for puberphonia. Some of the signs of puberphonia versus having a higher than average voice is with puberphonia, you're going to get a lot of voice breaks. So you might speak with a high voice all the time and sometimes find that your voice breaks down, right? As if you were going through puberty at that moment. You'll also find that your voice is a lot more of a whisper most of the time, right? Since you're speaking at a pitch that is much, much higher than what your larynx is built for. You're not going to be able to produce very loud sounds, right? You won't be able to shout. You won't be able to speak to somebody if there's any background noise. So if you're in a busy restaurant, which what's that? I haven't seen that in a year. But if there are people and sounds around you, you're going to find it hard to communicate with somebody, right? Those are all of them that I can think of at the top of my head. Okay, so finding the voice. We're going to trick the brain by using by using some of these natural body functions that you don't really associate with the voice. So one of those is a cough. So one strategy that I'll do is have the client cough, just right? That's going to be where your natural voice is. And then you're going to want to go into a cough and hold. Like that. Something that's a little bit easier on your throat is something that I call a hard glottal attack. Your glottis it's not even a body part really. It's the area in between your vocal folds when they're open. So like as you're breathing, there's a gap between your vocal folds. That's your glottis, right? So we're going to shove that closed and then explode. So that's what's happening when you're coughing, but we're going to do something a little less, not intrusive, something a little less hard on your vocal folds. Still kind of hard on your vocal folds, so we want to kind of shift away from it as soon as we can. So how I usually get clients to do a hard glottal attack is I will have them take their hands under their desk and kind of like pretend that they're going to just toss up the desk, right? So putting your hands under and putting pressure and going, like that. And then I shape away from that by having you hold out your hands and pretending you have your desk. So kind of bearing down and going, So that's going to trick your brain because you can't have that hard glottal attack. You can't be squeezing your vocal folds together and then having them explode at that high pitch, at that raised with that raised larynx. So we're tricking your body into finding out where you should be. What is your larynx built for. So I tend to kind of work my way through the vowels and try and get a softer and softer glottal attack. I think one of the only times in English that we use what's called a glottal stop is during the word uh-oh. So you'll hear kind of like that pop, the uh-oh right there. So we might use those a couple times. Oh, and just make it hard and then easier and easier and easier until it's like that normal uh-oh. This is why I say that you might need a speech therapist, even though you're coming to a webinar that's talking about it, and I'm always available for questions. Being able to work with the speech therapist is going to allow somebody who knows some techniques to kind of look, try something out. If that's not working, try something else out. And I also find that it's hard for people when they hear their own voice change. I want to say almost every time, once we get a new lower voice, the first question is, does that sound fake? Does that sound stupid? And usually, no, it doesn't. It sounds like any other man's voice. But yeah, it's hard when we hear our own voices differently. It's hard to establish, okay, does that sound normal to anybody else? Because it doesn't sound normal to me, right? So anyway, so we try and get a softer and softer glottal attack until it's kind of normal, until we can just say a vowel without using the glottal attack. Then we try a list of words, random words, and then phrase level. So the next level would be like reading a passage, and then conversation. We should, and this process is quite quick, right? So we're just kind of getting you used to it. It takes some concentration at first. I want to say that most of the time, I'm struggling with whether I should say it, but most of the time, we can get to this conversation level in 1 or 2 sessions, right? This is one of the easiest disorders that a speech therapist is going to come across. However, since it's so rare, and since, it just uses the other properties of any other type of voice therapy treatment, not a lot of people talk about it. Not a lot of speech therapists meet somebody with puberphonia in their entire careers. So that is why there's no resources online for y'all to use at home. Okay, so once we've established, also, before we start going into vocal function exercises, I wanted to say that it is possible that the cough or hard glottal attack doesn't work for you. It's possible. There are more strategies, and I'm hoping to use or to get to more strategies in different webinars. I need to do more research, but these are the strategies that I've used, right? These are the strategies that I find to be successful. Anyway, once you've got your new voice, you might need some vocal function exercises, right? You might be feeling, you don't typically feel pain when you use this new voice. However, that is possible, or it's possible that the voice is kind of weak and you need to kind of strengthen it. So we have vocal function exercises. And we tend to use these exercises a lot at first and then kind of taper it down over time. So at first, you would be doing all 4 of these exercises 2 times a day, right? And then kind of tapering it down to you just do one of them once a week, right? So here are the 4 exercises. Number 1 is to hold E for as long as possible, right? So using your new low voice, hold E with good resonance. Oh, yeah, okay. So let's let's talk about that for a second. We have so much to talk about. So good resonance will look like typically when people are talking and they want a lot of power to come from their voice, they'll overuse their larynx, right? All the power is going to come from your vocal folds. But something that is good for the health of your vocal folds is to use pharyngeal resonance. So this is where we get into the woo, right? where people look at me like, Paige, what are you talking about? If you pretend that you have a mask in front of your face, which we should all be really good at pretending, but if you kind of visualize your voice coming from that mask, I don't know why that imagery works, but it will make you resonate up here instead of putting all that pressure on your vocal folds. It's kind of how professional singers can project their voice, is they figure out how to resonate so that all the power isn't coming from here, but you're using those resonating cavities in your face to project your voice and to keep your voice going longer. So anyway, you're going to want to use good resonance for all of these exercises. So hold E for as long as possible. So something like E. I probably could have held it longer, but I would have really pooped out. So do that. That's kind of like a warm up for your voice. And then, so second exercise, we're going to use the word knoll. There's a reason for that. It's just the shape of your mouth and how it interacts with your throat. It's complicated. So we're going to go from low to high. So your goal is going to be for no voice break. So doing that, just linear no, without having any voice breaks. There is this kind of natural point in your vocal range where you're going from like your voice to your head voice or to your falsetto, that your voice will break, but we're going to try and minimize that, right? So you can also use a lip trill, which I can't do. It's that raspberry thing I can try. And like that's as much as I can do. You can do a tongue trill, or you can use the word whoop. Whoop. You can use that if you don't want to use no. If there is a voice break, just continue on. That's okay. It's just our goal that as we're doing these vocal function exercises over time, that you wouldn't have a voice break. But it's okay. Not the end of the world if you have a voice break. So this exercise helps you with muscular control. It's kind of like if you were going to the gym, you've done your warm up, you're going to do your stretching. And now we're going to use knoll again and go from high to low. And your goal again is no voice breaks or as little as possible. And then also no growl at the end. So I keep doing this thing called glottal fry. A lot of people my age do this. So glottal fry, I also call it the Kim Kardashian voice. It's where at the end of your sentence, your voice goes so low that you can hear like the individual vibrations of your vocal folds. So it's like you don't want any glottal fry, right? I keep doing a little version of that at the end of my sentences. It's really bad for your voice, but you don't want that growl sound at the end of your knoll. So you want to stop before that happens. So it'll sound like, no. Ooh, I didn't actually have a growl. That was cool. You can also use the lip trill again. Not going to show you another example. The tongue trill or the word boom. So you can go, ooh. I forgot for a second. Were we doing low to high or high to low? No. So this is more of your contracting exercise, right? This is This is your bicep curl here. And then we have 5 musical notes. Again, this is going to be where having a speech therapist is helpful. So if you have a piano, I don't have my phone ready, but there are online keyboards. You can do a good like average note would be 1 octave below middle C. I know that that doesn't mean a lot if you're not musical, but yeah, I don't know how else to, yeah, so you can find programs and apps that can kind of help you with that, but you're going to do 5 musical notes. So usually the octave below middle C, and then the 4 notes above that, like D, E, F, G. That would be a good kind of place as an average, right? Again, a speech therapist is going to work with you to see what 5 notes you would want to do. But you're going to want to just hold them for as long as possible, right? So an octave below middle C is kind of low for me, but I'll try it. It'll be something like oh, as long as possible, right? So with all of those exercises, you're going to want to do all of them as softly as you can while still having good vocal fold engagement, right? So you don't want to whisper them, but you also don't want to shout them. And I mean, I'm shouting right now because that's how I work on webcam. You want to practice them all with good resonance, no tension. So if it helps, you can do those warm-ups that we talked about at the start. And if you wanted to take data, you could, take data on exercise 4, those 5 musical notes, and over time you'll see that you're able to hold them for longer and probably also being able to sustain that note too without any breaks. How are we doing on time? 30 minutes. Wow. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, I haven't seen anything in the live chat, so that's okay. But no questions so far, obviously. I don't think anybody's watching. It's okay. It's fine. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is the area that I see the most questions posted in the forum, and also the most questions that are asked of me, are people in the desensitization phase. So that is the phase where you have your voice, you have your new low voice. You also can use it, without tiring out, and you can confidently use it. However, it's using it in front of other people that is an issue, which I can understand. It's kind of an interesting thing where you seek out help and you see a speech therapist and you get this low voice, or you even, find it yourself and you go through this work to fix this thing that is causing you mental anguish or however you would classify your feelings about it. And then you're successful, and now it's, oh man, if I use this new low voice, people are going to comment about it. Because probably people comment about your voice now, even if they're not particularly hurtful, and everybody's got kind of a different sort of experience there. Even if they're not particularly hurtful comments, people still comment or people still react. So it does get to be for some people that even if people were to react positively to your voice, it still feels negative. Any reaction to your voice is negative. So people tend to use speech therapists and counselors to kind of have a desensitization program. But what usually happens, and like I said, you're going to want people who are going to help you individualize it or, think through it yourself. But here's some ideas, right? For some people, they can kind of use comedy and integrate that into their desensitization. So there was a story that I was told by one of our professors where there was a client in high school who found their new low voice, got confident with it, and they went to class, chemistry class or whatever, and they asked to go get some water. And then when he came back in, he opens the door and he goes, I don't know, in his new low voice, I don't know what's in that water, but now I'm healed. Hallelujah. Right. Or a more kind of subtle comic approach was a guy in his 20s who showed up to work one day with a low voice, and somebody was like, well, what's that about? And he goes, 22 is as good a time as any to hit puberty, and then just moved on. But some people aren't necessarily okay with that much personality in their coming out with a low voice. So you may need more steps in your desensitization stage. So something that I usually tell people is you can find for yourself who's it going to be most comfortable to speak with in your new voice. Who's a low risk person? And usually a low risk person would be a stranger. So if you go through the drive-through and you order at McDonald's, that person has no idea what your voice sounds like either way. So you can use your new low voice and they're not going to comment on it. Chances are, most people don't comment on most other people's voices. So, so that could be somebody who you can use your new voice with that is low risk. It can also be, then the next level, you could kind of think about a family member or a friend that is going to be respectful to your wishes, right? So it might be, your best friend, tell them, hey, okay, we're going to hang out tomorrow, or we're going to FaceTime, or we're going to go on Xbox Live tomorrow. And I have found that I can use a lower voice, or I've gone to a speech therapist and I found this lower voice. So I'm going to speak with it tomorrow. What I need from you is for you to not comment about it. I don't want you to ask questions. I don't want, and this is, of course, what you guys want, right? Maybe you do want to answer questions. Maybe you want one comment. Like, tell me if it sounds like a normal person, and then I want to move on, right? But tell them what you want. Be honest with what you want. Ask them if they're willing to do that. And if they are, hold them to it. And, hopefully that person is somebody that you can trust to respect your wishes. And then that's a safe space for you. And then you'll have to widen that net over time. And that takes time. Let's see. There can also be, if you feel that there's not very many people who are going to respect your wishes to not field a million questions about your new voice, you might want to consider having a third party. So like, let's say you think your parents aren't going to respect your wishes. You might have a person that you've already used your voice around come with, or have a counselor, or somebody that your parents respect, like an aunt or an uncle or somebody, because usually parents act differently, and other people who feel that they have some sort of authority over you and are entitled for you to answer their questions, and they feel entitled to make a comment, they tend to kind of back off and be on their best behavior when there's a third party involved, or when it's somebody, especially if it's somebody that they respect already, they don't want to come off looking like they don't respect you. And so it's a whole weird psychological thing. But this stage could definitely, you can definitely use a counselor to kind of help with that. But that's my advice. There are no questions in the live chat, so I think I'm going to go. I hope this is helpful. Yep, got through that sentence. I hope this is helpful for you guys, and give me ideas. Tell me how you're doing. Keep the questions coming. I love being able to kind of talk with different people and help you guys out. It's really important to me. That you guys find a lot of hope in our little subreddit that we have. And I hope to add to that. Okay, I'm going to end the stream now. All right, how do you end the stream? Oh my goodness. The red button? What?